May I have your attention? Please welcome TechCrunch Senior Climate Writer Tim Deschamps, Ruth Foxe Blader, Partner at Anthemis, and Thejo Kote, Founder and CEO, Airbase.
All right, thank you for joining us, everyone. We've got a great Q&A session here. If you need to submit questions on Slido, we should have a QR code up there if you haven't seen it already. It should be popping up on occasion. So we're going to be discussing today how to compete without losing your mind or your bank account. And one of the things I want to get to right away is this idea about competing against large incumbents. And I guess one of the questions is, when do you know when to compete and when to partner?
So when you're talking to about a large incumbent in our space, I guess that would be folks like Amex and others. We just made it a core part of our strategy to partner, right? So Amex is actually a small investor in Airbase. We are working with them on a variety of initiatives, some of which hopefully we'll be able to talk about more over time. But that's kind of one way to think about not even being in the headlights or crossroads with large incumbents, is to figure out an opportunity to just partner. Sure. And that's what we have done. Right?
Yeah. Was there a moment, you say, when you kind of knew it was better to partner?
No, look, of course, that has to be baked into your strategy from day one. As kind of context for those of you who may not be familiar with Airbase, we're a spend management platform focused on mid-market businesses. And what that means is, businesses spend money, and you typically use lots of different systems to do that. Airbase brings together all of the non-payroll spending that happens in a business into one platform. AP bill payments, corporate cards, expense reimbursements. Instead of having many different systems for all of that, you kind of consolidate in one place. So that's what we do. And in our case, we've always looked at the opportunity ahead of us, not through a fintech lens, because we are a B2B SaaS and a fintech business. We kind of provide rich workflow support in our platform, but we also move a lot of money, and we have embedded payments in the platform. But we have always strategically thought of ourselves as a SaaS company first and a fintech company second, right? So it's really answering that question: what is core to what you do? What is the identity of your business? How do you want your customers to perceive you? What is the value that you are providing to your customers? And if it's really core to what you do, yeah, you either compete and you don't have an option around that. But if it's not, then you find the opportunities to partner with big company, small company, incumbent or not, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, yeah. Ruth, what do you say to founders who are trying to take on an incumbent?
So I think that if you're building a real challenger brand, don't forget the brand. I think that a lot of founders come from the perspective of really having a superior technology and a superior user experience, and both of those things are incredibly important. Typically, someone who is focused on the brand isn't a first hire at an early stage company. And while you don't need to necessarily make a hire, I think it's incredibly important to remember that particularly in the space that I invest in, which is financial services space, this is really a sector which relies on trust, and brand is incredibly important. And so, yeah, just remember that as you're challenging, your brand is incredibly important.
Yeah. Thejo, I think this one is directed to you. What do you think about Divvy's partnership with Amex Small Business Cards business?
Yeah, so it's early stages. Amex is a big company, and they tend to partner with lots of providers, right? And we are at a different stage of partnership with them. We're in the process of rolling out specific offerings. We are not exclusive to any given company. We don't expect any of our partners to be exclusive, to us, and that's just not how it works. But ultimately, the approach we take is there a good, joint, compelling story to be told, right? Because you want to have those conversations up front with any partner. What's in it for you? What's in it for me, right? What is your strategic rationale for doing this? What is our strategic rationale for doing this? What do you hope to take away? What do we hope to take away? You've got to have those conversations as early as possible in kind of the partnership discussion, and we've done those things with Amex, and we're kind of jointly making the investments because we have specific plans in terms of the kind of customer we want to target, the kind of value that we want to deliver to existing Amex customers, all of that kind of stuff. Early days, we don't have a huge amount to talk about that in public just yet, but hopefully there's a lot more that we will be talking about at the right time, right?
Yeah, great. Ruth, I've got another question here from the audience. Should you approach an investor with the idea or MVP, or should you try to get the product ready to go before seeking any funding?
That really depends on the stage that the investor focuses on. I think it's really important to do a bit of research about, let's say what the investor majors in. Sometimes investors will make exceptions for projects that they feel particularly passionately about, but typically investors who work in normal venture capital funds have a mandate for that fund, and they're not going to depart from that mandate. I would say at the earliest stages, business angels are really great investors. Not only do they provide capital, but they also can be really fantastic at making connections. And so, if you have the opportunity to access some of that angel capital initially, that can be really helpful to build a couple of proof points. But typically, most investors will communicate about where they expect the business to be when they look at it, and what their criteria are for investing in companies, how they define what stage it is. It's a little bit complex now because there has been quite a bit of valuation inflation, and so, it's like, oh, is that a seed round or was that a Series D? Sometimes it can be hard to tell, but typically it's very important to just understand the individual investor's mandate.
Yeah, another quick one, Ruth. Question about focusing on the brand. Someone's wanting to know if, for an early stage startup, are there 4 or 5 things you might focus on to create a brand?
Probably better to ask someone who is, there are so many amazing branding experts. I would say the company's values need to shine through, and really the brand is about, much more than the logo and, and the look and feel. It's really like the language and helping a customer feel at home. I would say some of the obvious mistakes that I see my companies make would be, creating a website where the customer group that you're targeting isn't represented. It's like people should go to, your kind of digital properties and understand that they belong there. And, that's kind of a language thing. That's a sort of what are the stock images that you're using? Really thinking through, is the ethos and the utility of the community being, or of the company being communicated everywhere possible.
Yeah. Thejo, I've got another one here from the audience. Do you think any business card or spend management will ever be able to challenge Amex's corporate card or small business card portfolios?
Yeah, so let me step back a bit in terms of thesis for us as a whole. Like I said, the fundamental problem we are trying to solve is to say there are too many silos, even small businesses for sure, even in mid-market businesses, in terms of where money is spent. If you look at every persona in the business that somehow is involved with how money is spent, finance and accounting teams, absolutely, but then every employee at some shape or form is spending money, right? You're claiming reimbursements and you're placing a request to go buy some software, and there are any number of use cases. And ultimately, our goal is to bring all of those non-payroll spending workflows and money movement into a single platform. And it is a good question to ask, hey, there have been these incumbents for a while, and what about them? What are they going to do about it? And the opportunity for startups like us is when there are shifts in what's possible in the market. And one of the interesting things that has happened in the last 5 years is access to financial infrastructure has become much easier, right? Companies like us can issue cards. Companies like us can more easily hold and move money through banks, and that kind of infrastructure level has matured quite a bit, which has made possible startups like Airbase. But having said that, I would argue it's also being commoditized, right? So those same primitives, every company has access to. So if all you're doing is issuing cards and saying, I'm going to compete on the basis of giving you more cash back, I'm going to compete on the basis of giving you a slightly larger line of credit, I don't know if in the long term that's enough of an advantage, right? So our focus has always been to say, focus on slightly larger companies, mid-market, early enterprise, 100 to a few thousand employees. They care a lot more about workflows. They care about how the glue comes together in terms of connecting the workflows from an employee's perspective, approvers, finance and accounting people, all that kind of stuff. And so workflows matter. And we charge for, think of it like project management software. Like spending money is in many ways a collaboration problem, right? And so how do you think of it more from that perspective? And also, when it becomes a software problem, there are workflows associated with corporate cards too, right? Like that's kind of a sub-thesis for us, is that the corporate card of the future is going to be a software product. It's going to be a software workflow product. It's not going to be a piece of plastic that you put in an envelope and you mail to your employees. And the bigger question to ask is, are some of the incumbents, the traditional corporate card providers like the banks and all of them, are they in a position to become software companies and software workflow companies as the shift in expectation happens among customers, and is there where you can add value? So that's kind of the unique angle that we bring to the table. And I'd like to think with some of the partnerships we have that we've announced already, the people in those larger companies see and are asking themselves the same questions, right? And that's how we've approached it.
So you'd say along those lines that you're seeing yourself more as complementary to what Amex is offering, where you're maybe filling in some of the gaps that they might not be seeing in these mid-market businesses.
In the sense that if you believe that thesis, that the corporate card of the future is a software workflow product, right? Because a huge pain point for companies that spend money on cards, and if you've been in that position, especially if you're on the finance and accounting side of the house in businesses, you realize that it's easy for employees to share cards and numbers in Slack, card numbers in Slack, and shared cards in 1Password, and there are always surprises at the end of the month when you get a statement. Who the hell spent this? Who has access to that card? And no control, no visibility. You can go from that world to a very good software-driven workflow. Hey, make it a very simple request process. I'm going to place a request as an employee, and the right people are going to approve it. And once all the approvals are done, you can create a specific, say, virtual card with all the right limits placed on it. You only get access to that card number and not a card with a much bigger limit on it. And then as transactions are happening on those cards, you can automate away how it's all categorized and synced into the general ledger to help with the monthly close process. That's a workflow, right? That's a software product. And the instrument of the card and the 16 digits that you ultimately go to a merchant's website and put in, that's like a very small detail of the larger workflow around spend that has to happen in the business. And so that's the approach that we've always taken. And while we issue our own cards, strategically, we don't think that is super important in terms of the larger problem that we solve. And I've never wanted to compete in the corporate card wars, right? And as the financial infrastructure, issuing infrastructure has been commoditized, my belief has always been that you got to go to the next level and compete at the software layer. And that's why we're more than happy to partner with any other card issuer as long as our strategies align and we're not directly competing. And that's what some of the partnerships we have are all about.
Yeah, so related to partnerships, there's another question from the audience. Have you thought about partnering with people outside, companies outside of corporate card issuers, accounting firms, for example?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have an entire VP level person who's a key part of our go-to-market team and VP of business development. And we have efforts around building channel and partnerships in a variety of areas, right? So obviously some of these banking partnerships are one of them. NetSuite and Intact are really good, strong partners of ours because we integrate deeply with those general ledgers. And pretty much every customer who signs up with us, not pretty much, every one of them, they have a general ledger. Right. A core part of our value proposition is that we integrate with those general ledgers. And so not just NetSuite and Intact, but the ecosystem of players who operate in their ecosystem. They're large established companies, so they can be channel partners for us. Accounting firms, as long as they serve a specific size of customer, can be a good fit for us. So we absolutely long-term think about channel and partnerships and the role that can play in generating pipeline for us as we kind of pursue our growth goals.
Yeah. Ruth, along those lines, when you're thinking about this for your portfolio companies, and maybe they come to you and they say, we're looking to expand, we're looking to develop new lines of business, work with new companies, other partnerships. What kind of advice do you give them?
I think that what we really try to do is assess if the potential partnership is a distraction or if it's going to help us to achieve our core goals. Excuse me.
Yeah, it's okay.
And so, we have a limited amount of capital, we have a limited amount of intellectual resource, and ultimately we understand what our short and long-term goals are, and if these partnerships can help us to achieve them, then we say go for it.
So are there, in a case like this, if we're thinking there's accounting firms, there's corporate cards, are there other places that you might direct a startup to head?
So I will not direct my startups to do anything.
Gotcha.
They know the market much better than I do. If they need my help, we're in trouble. Just kidding. So, there could be all manner of interesting partnership opportunities. Where we really look to do good work in the fintech space is we think about underwriting advantage, we think about product advantage, and we think about distribution advantage. Anyone who can help us in any one of those ways, is a potential candidate. I would say at the earliest stages, integration of new partners can cost more than it yields.
Right.
And it's very often difficult to assess both that cost side and what will be yielded. So any de-risking that we can do around either of those sides of the equation is something that we'll look to do, we'll think very critically about.
Yeah, Thejo, how did you go about that process when you were considering the Amex partnership?
Look, not just the Amex partnership, but any kind of pessimistic way, right? Because it takes a really long time for you to start seeing results, typically, right? And 24 months. And the way we think about that is in the investments at which we are growing, if you want to add a certain amount of pipeline that is doubling, it may take that long, but you got to invest in that now. And the hardest thing to do and to be disciplined about is to kind of set aside that money when you're not seeing returns today, and it's lowering your efficiency from a go-to-market perspective overall. You got to have faith at some level, right? That may come from experience, that may come from examples of other similar companies that have built those channels after investing over a period of time. But you got to have that faith at some level. And at earlier stage companies, it really tends to be a board level decision down, where is this something we want to invest in? Because chances are you're not going to see results for a good while, and you have to be okay with that, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we're just about out of time, so I want to thank the audience for excellent questions, and thank you, Thejo and Ruth. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.